And it's been the perfect storm for people to just say, hey, Haaland is the only way. This is the best way to play FPL. And I look at it from my perspective where I'm sitting here like, bro, this is probably the worst Manchester City team that I've seen in the past 3 or 4 seasons. What are people thinking? Hi FPL community, it's your boy Kanji FPL and welcome back to the channel. On today's video, there are a couple things I really wanted to touch on. The first is just going to be a raw discussion about the Premier League in general. Then I want to be discussing my FPL team as well as my transfer plans and why I'm looking to bring in the best finisher that's currently existing in the Premier League into my FPL squad. Now, if you know who that is, then you already know who I'm going to be bringing in, but if you don't, you're going to have to stay tuned to find out. Now, let's just first discuss the Premier League in general. And I think the main topic of discussion is going to be Erling Haaland. I've actually chose to go the entire season against Erling Haaland, regardless of his fixtures and his form and who's in his team or not. It doesn't really make a difference to me. I look at Haaland at 15.0 and I don't think he represents a value pick. And I've had this exact opinion from game week 1 and I'm not changing my mind. With him being priced almost perfectly and the fact that FPL has captaincy, it means that you need the likes of Erling Haaland when he has good fixtures, because if you can captain someone, you're able to get double of their points. And that's why a lot of managers have gone into the Haaland structures. And just as like a perfect storm for the Haaland owners, the other sub-premium options, the likes of Alexander Isak, Arsenal defenders, Arsenal keepers, Bruno Fernandes, Ibrice Eze, the more like premium players relative to the likes of like a Semenyo and a Rodgers, they've all been very underwhelming. And there's a part of me that's really happy because I was sitting here looking at the YouTube comments of my videos, listening to people on Twitter Spaces, and they're telling me that Haaland's on pace to get a 60-goal season. He's essential. You're a lunatic to go without him. And I'm sitting here now where, he had 10 goals in 5 games, and now he has 10 goals in 7 or 8 games. And I'm sitting here like, wow, it's crazy what happens with football and variance, and it's crazy how the narrative switches. Over the course of Haaland's career, he's had 120 XG and scored 135 goals. He's an XG overperformer, and there's no doubting the quality that Haaland has. But it's just about the service that's being provided for him. Gundogan and Bernardo are being played in the cam positions against Wolves away, where you went out there and lost to them last year. Now, I know that Phil Foden went out during the international break and participated with the England squad. He started the first game, was benched for the second game, but still was benched for the Wolves match. Now, I'm not sure if he's on the naughty step with Pep, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, you lost to Wolves last year in this exact position. And it was a very similar scenario where Wolves just sort of sat deep. They gave possession to Manchester City, and they said, hey, we're going to be doubling up on Erling Haaland, and that's your main source of goals, so someone else go out there and go beat us. Vardiol and Rico and Gundogan and Bernardo, they had plenty of shots from outside the box. They couldn't do anything with it. And I think this is the exact type of game plan that every single team in the Prem should have just watched, and they're going to do it. And I don't think there's anything Pep can do, because Gundogan and Bernardo are just not as good as Foden and KDB in those positions. So I don't know why he benched Foden. As soon as Foden came in the game, he was the threat. He was the one that if you didn't own him from an FPL perspective, you're like, holy, I'm scared to watch this guy because he can change the game in any instant. And Foden and KDB are known for their finishing. If you have somebody like Haaland, where if he's in a one-on-one with a defender, he's going to finish it. He's going to find a way to bully the guy off or beat him with pace and just finish the ball. But if you don't have someone that can create the chances for Haaland, he's just sort of sitting there looking around come on guys, do what you're supposed to do, because that's what ManCity have been doing for the past 2 or 3 seasons. They've been providing for him. But in order for that to happen, they need to have players the likes of Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne that demand double teams themselves. Because when you have the likes of Foden or Kevin De Bruyne at the edge of the box, they can finish that consistently. But you wouldn't trust Gundo or Bernardo to do that at this point in their careers. And they're relying on Vardiol goals in the past couple of weeks to save them and give them results. Now, they got very lucky away at Wolves, where Foden came off the bench in the last 15 minutes, changed the game a little bit. I mean, he was struggling to really get enough possession to really do enough with it, but he got the assist in the last minute of the game. And I've seen this from Foden over the past 365 days already. Foden is he's just their best player. Honestly, that's my personal opinion. Now, I'm saying this because my expectations for Haaland are way above Foden, where I'm looking at him like he's the fastest, he's the strongest, he's on the penalties. I expect so much of him. But last year, I think he had, 29 XG and scored 27 goals. He underperformed his expectations. And for me, if he has 29 XG, I expect 35 goals because he's that good. So with him underperforming, Foden was the one that was the most consistent player, especially when Haaland got injured. Foden was the one that was there, that was the most consistent player for Man City, started almost every single game and got an attack return in almost every game. Like, he was making it look so easy. And so I'm looking at it now where you don't have the security blanket and the insurance of a Julian Alvarez. I'm looking at Man City like there's no way this team wins the Prem. Now, Alvarez was such an underrated player, and I'm so glad that he left. Not because I'm a Liverpool fan and I want Man City to be weak and barren. In fact, I look at the Prem where I want as much competition at the highest level, so it just makes it entertainment and more enjoyable to watch. Like, I don't want to know what's going to happen in a game, rather than just knowing how this game's going to end before it starts. And so I just look at Julian Alvarez where he's the type of striker that could start for any other team in the Premier League apart from maybe he could even start for Arsenal and Liverpool. Like, that's how good of a striker he was. Like, genuinely, or is. And now he went away, he went to Atletico Madrid, because there's no way he should be a backup striker. Like, this guy should be starting for Argentina, starting for Atletico Madrid. Like, he's just quality. And so, like, an actually overperformer, just like the likes of Foden and De Bruyne himself. Like, why would he be a second striker and play second fiddle? Like, yes, you can go out to Man City and win trophies, but means the margin for error is just smaller. You've lost Rodri, the guy that controls the games, arguably the best center defensive midfielder in the past 4 or 5 years. Now, KDB is just not really existent. He's not going to be there. I don't know if he's going to play more than 25 games this year. Who knows? And so Pep has to rely on Foden. And without Foden, Man City are just not going to have anything, because teams are just going to double up on Haaland, and I just don't see him just doing much in general. And especially with the price point of 15.0, there's no need for him in FPL teams. I have to give a special shout out to Cheng Kiat. This is FPL Enthusiast on Twitter, where we've just been going back and forth about going with Haaland or going against Haaland, and just the likes of teams should have just been doubling him. He's the main output of goal source in Man City anyway. So we've had this discussion, and he's the one that actually just spurred the sort of the thought. And I guess he planted the seed, and I've sort of watered it over time. And so shout out to him for this idea. And it just feels very obvious at this point. Now, I think from an FPL perspective, you're going to see a lot of content creators look at their teams where Haaland's priced at 15.0, and they're going to look to just ship him off. Maybe he goes out there against Southampton and it changes the narrative. He scores a hat trick. Everyone that owns him is like, man, maybe I shouldn't sell him because he's just this good. But for me, the only way that Haaland's a good FPL pick is if Foden and Kevin De Bruyne are starting matches. When these two are not there and they're not demanding double teams from the opposition where you have to be protecting them, that means that you can just double up Haaland defensively. Teams can just sit deep, let City have all the possession because they won't be able to do enough with it. And I know that Pep is one of the best coaches I've ever seen. And as a Liverpool fan, I've looked at the way that we've played football over the past 4 or 5 years under Klopp, and we were probably the best team. We had multiple moments to win a treble. Like, it just goes to show you how great our team was. Like, Robertson and Trent were just, they changed the entire way that football was being played. Of course, Pep has done that as well, but Liverpool were operating at such a high level, but we don't have enough Premier League and Champions League trophies because Pep exists. And so when I'm saying all this negative stuff about Pep, I have to tell you that there's a chance that Pep will find a way to change his system to bring the best out of everything. But I still think they shouldn't be title favorites. And they are in the bookies to be title favorites, and I think they shouldn't be, because the margin for error is too small. And I'm looking at Arsenal, where they have injuries themselves. Like, this would be the team that's coming into their prime. All of their core players are like in the perfect prime years. Odegaard, Saka, Saliba, they're all in their like mid-20s. Like, this should be the team that's like fighting Man City to win the trophy. Like, it should be Arsenal. Like, realistically, as a Liverpool fan, I have to be honest. Virgil, Alisson, and Mo, like, these guys are past their primes. Like, they're not performing at the highest levels currently as they have in previous moments in their career. And that's just honesty. Like, that's just straight up. As a Liverpool fan, I have to just keep it real. But for some reason, that's the team I think that's going to win the Prem. Now, if there wasn't a mid-season transfer window, I think it would be hard for anyone to argue that Man City would win the Prem. But I think Man City will go out there in January. They'll probably buy some sort of standard defensive midfielder. They'll probably buy another midfielder to sort of add to the mix of the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and Foden that can provide that sort of creativity, because the likes of Gundo and Bernardo and Matthias Nunez, these guys are not that good. Kovacic has been that shining star, taking up that CDM role for Man City, but he can't do it at the same level as Rodri. Like, he's not as good in terms of winning duels. Like, he scored some great goals, and he's been really key for them, scoring against Chelsea. I think he scored as well, I think, this week, I think game week 7 or game week 8. So he's played very well, and no disrespecting to him at all. And I think he's sort of been a shining light for Pep and someone that stepped into a void. Now, I'm looking at Man City, where in the last week they played against Wolves, and they really got away with it. They didn't perform that great at all, and it was a last-minute, like, corner, like, Foden bailed them out. Then it was Fulham the week before, where Fulham had more XG than Man City had. That just goes to show you how poor that Man City have been. And in the game week before that, it was a very underwhelming performance versus Newcastle. And when they played against Arsenal, Arsenal should have got away with that toxic, boring defensive style of football, because Man City also got lucky with another last minute winner. And you can say that, those are the types of moments that make champions who they are, because they have that championship DNA in them to get those returns and have those big moments in the last couple of minutes of games to get the results. But I don't think what they're doing is sustainable. And I'm very confident that if they don't make any additions in like the mid-season or during the January transfer window, they're not going to win the Prem. And that's a bold take, because all the bookies and all of the data will always tell you Man City is the favorite. But they're not that team this year. It sounds a little bit crazy for me to be so negative on a team that's played 8 games in the Prem, won 6 of them, and drawn 2. But they don't even deserve the results that they've gotten. And I know I'm a Liverpool fan, and I'm biased, and I know that there's like a part of me that would Liverpool have my heart, and so do Arsenal in a way. But I just have to be honest, and I don't think this is gonna be Manchester City's year. I just don't see it. And maybe this is gonna be a meme. Maybe like 10 to 15 weeks from now, they've gone on another classic Manchester City win streak. But the way that they're playing football right now, it's terrible relative to the standards that they've put up in previous years. Okay, so just to tie up this entire section where I've just sort of discussed the Premier League and just been as raw as I possibly can be, I feel like Man City are in a very similar situation this year to where Liverpool were in their last year under Klopp, where it's like some of the results that Liverpool got, where it's like a Trent goal from outside the box, or McAllister with a goal outside the box, or a last minute winner for Darwin against like a Forest or something like that, or a Newcastle, where it's like we got a result where we didn't deserve it. And it reminds me of where Man City are at this exact moment in time. And whatever Liverpool were doing, where they were conceding a 1 goal in the first like 15 or 20 minutes in every single game in a row, that is the version of Man City that I think currently exists. And I feel like that team is not going to go on to win the Prem. And I'm looking at Haaland at 15.0. I don't think he's a good value pick. All these things are just sort of aligned. And I just feel like that's just my honest and humble opinion. And if I provided some value to you over the course of this rant, or if you sort of agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comment section down below. I will always reply to all of my comments. I've built like my YouTube channel from like 100 subscribers to 250 subs. So thankful for all your support, and to me this channel is just like a hobby and something I love to do. So for every single comment and like, it helps pump out the algorithm and it encourages me to continue producing content. So hopefully you'll be able to do that for me. And now we can move on to the FPL portion of this video. Oh mate, game week 8, the red arrow, it felt like fate. Especially without Erling Haaland. The question was just going to be about how big was Red Arrow going to be, but unfortunately, instead of Haaland inflicting a majority of the damage, I actually inflicted it to myself. And I'll just break it down. My main move on paper was supposed to be Bukayo Saka to Heung-min Son, but I decided to change my mind because I felt like I'd made a mistake on my wildcard. When I wildcarded, I kept my double Arsenal defense, which I started with in game week 1, and I felt like when I got to game week 8, that Saliba was the wrong pick. The more time that passed, I was looking at the data for Saliba. It's like he had no shots in 8 games, didn't have a single key pass, and I'm paying 6.0 for this man. And I just felt like paying 6.0 for someone that has no goal threat from a premium defense has been underwhelming. And the team that just lacks so much discipline, picking up 3 red cards in 8 games, it just felt wrong. So that's why I just wanted to get a -4, get rid of Saliba, and get to a Raya. I was so happy to go with double Arsenal defense. Over the course of 38 weeks, I think Raya will be the highest scoring goalie in the game. There's no doubt about that. Even though he's picked up a lot of early points, it does feel like a little bit of a sheepish move to join the goalie that I think is probably going to be the highest owned. I could have considered the likes of Onana and Pickford, but I just didn't want to spend another transfer on that spot. And I really wanted to prioritize spending transfers on the spots that I think have more upside, which is going to be the premium assets in my midfield as well as my front line. So when I'm looking to keep my structure the same, I decided to take that -4 in defense, bring in a Raya, bring in Aït-Nouri. Now, Aït-Nouri is something that I have been monitoring since last season, where I actually tweeted this out, and this is in March of 2024, and I said, if Ryan Aït-Nouri is priced at 4.5 in FPL, I'm starting with him in game week 1. Now, unfortunately, Wolves had the worst fixtures to start the season, so there's no way I could have started with him. But if you look at the fixture run from game week 10 to game week 17, that is absolutely gorgeous. And I feel like I'm doing my former self some justice because Aït-Nouri is just a really good pick. He's picked up 4 attacking returns in the first 8 games, and he's played against the likes of Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea. Like, all of them are difficult fixtures are already out of the way. this is going to be his time to shine. And I feel like he has a very strong rotation potential with the likes of Rico Lewis. Now, Rico Lewis himself is a very underrated asset, given that there was an update on Kyle Walker, given that he has a potential knee injury. We don't know how long term or how long he's going to be out. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be the season, who knows. But I've already felt that Walker's already sort of past his prime, and Rico Lewis has already taken some minutes away. And in the first couple weeks of the season, he really impressed me. And I feel like he's probably impressed a lot of Manchester City fans as well as Pep as well. And I think Rico Lewis deserves his spot in the team. He's not just getting that spot because of Walker, missing games and getting a little bit older. Like, Rico definitely deserves it. And he's played very well. He's been their star player a lot of the time. It's not a surprise to see him nailing his spot down in the starting 11. And I don't think this will change over the course of the season at all. And that's why I'm looking to have a very strong defensive rotation between Rico Lewis and Aït-Nouri, where I would play Rico in game weeks 8 and 9, and then again in probably 14 and 15, and then again from 18, 19 to 22. And then I'd be relying on Aït-Nouri in the other fixtures because he has very solid attacking threat, given that he has 0.2 XGI per 90 this season, and that's actually through some of the more difficult matches. So I would assume that if he plays some of the easier fixtures, Wolves would dominate the possession more, and he have more chances to create and to score goals. So that's why I think that his XGI per 90 will actually increase to around 0.3 XGI per 90 in easy fixtures. So that's why he felt like an absolute no-brainer to get to. And then Rico Lewis, I know his data doesn't look as strong, but he's actually picked up, I think, an attack return in the Champions League. I remember watching a game where he had 3 shots on target, and he's a defender. And he's priced at 4.7, and he plays for ManCity. Like, it was just hard for me to look past Rico. And so I'm looking at this defensive rotation where it looks really solid over the next couple of weeks. I know there's a very weird rotation part from game week 23 to game week 26 or even 27, but we can cross that bridge when we get there. For now, I really like what this defensive rotation looks like, and because I put that into my FPL team now, I've minus forward that in. I feel like I have the best goalie in the game. I have the 2 best defensive assets in Trent and Gabriel, and I have a very solid third defensive rotation between Rico Lewis and Ryan Aït-Nouri. And that means that I can now focus my transfers on the midfield. Just like everything else in life, there's always an opportunity cost. And instead of doing this double defensive move and taking a -4, I should have done Saka to Son. And that was the right move on paper, and just let Saliba sit there and rot. Let Flecken sit there and rot. I probably would have been better off maybe over the long term, and especially in the short term, because this move costed me, I think, 14 points immediately. Where if I had just done Saka to Son, instead of having Cunha coming off the bench for 2 points, I would have had Son coming off the bench for 8 points. So that's a 6-point swing. Then if I had Son, I probably would have captained him over a Phil Foden, where Son scored 8 and Foden scored 4, so that's another 4-point swing. So if you add the 6 plus 4, that's 10. And I also took a -4. So that's a 14-point swing by just not making the right disciplined move. And that hurts. But to be honest, I deserve it. And when I asked different people about this FPL transfer and what they thought of it, a lot of people thought it was a bad move. But honestly, even though I knew it was a bad move, I did it anyway. And the reason I did it is because I'm happy to lock in my defense. I feel so much happier. Like, every week that passed by, I would feel so much anxiety with Flecken. Like, I just don't trust him at all. And the same way it feels for Saliba, where it's like, this guy's overpriced. He's not a good pick. How lucky was I that I took a -4 to sell a guy that actually got -3. LOL. Like, that's just like good luck or positive variance. But I don't know. It's been such a weird season. I don't even know what to think of it. It's just like, how funny is that timing, But either way, I just knew that I didn't want to get to Saliba at 6.0. He's too expensive. He hasn't done anything. He doesn't deserve to be priced that way this year. And so now that that thing is done, I just have to leave that in the past, and I have to look forward. But just reflecting on certain things that have happened last week, Calvert-Lewin continues to blank. He had 1.3 XG in the game and didn't get a goal. But I'm not even too mad about it, because whenever I researched Calvert-Lewin and I brought him into my team, I knew that he was an XG underperformer, but I just thought that if he picked up enough chances, he would score goals. But boy, was I mistaken. And Calvert-Lewin is definitely leaving my team. Definitely. I'm just not sure when. Then when I'm looking at Solanke, this is going to be something that Baker from the Above Average pod mentioned, and he actually compared the Spurs front three to the prime Liverpool front three. That's going to be the Mane, Salah, and Firmino front three. Now, he's not comparing them in terms of quality, but he's comparing them in terms of the way that the offense functions, and I completely agree with this. And I'd already noticed this when I was watching. I'm like, man, Solanke didn't even get a shot last game, and even in the most recent game, that same exact thing happened, where I didn't even see him shoot the ball once. I'm sure that he didn't get a shot on target in both matches as well. So if you're the striker for a team that's scoring, 4 or 6 goals in the last 2 weeks combined. How does that make sense? You don't have a shot on target. Like, what is going on? And it's because Solanke is dropping into midfield, getting to that center attacking mid or center forward role that Firmino used to do for Liverpool, and Brennan Johnson and Heung-min Son are running in behind, similar to the likes of Mane and Salah. And that's why you want to own the likes of Son and Brennan Johnson. And that's another reason why I really regret going with Saka and just not going for Son early, because I know 100% that I need to move to Son soon because he has good fixtures. He has a very strong record versus Aston Villa, and he plays Ipswich at home. I could literally captain him in those 2 weeks. So that's another regret. But either way, it's the fact that Solanke is dropping deeper for the Spurs attack that makes him not the best FPL pick. But a few weeks ago against Brentford and against Man United, he had over 1 XG in both matches. So I think I will stay patient and hold the faith up until game week 11, because Spurs play against Crystal Palace, they play against Aston Villa, then they play against Ipswich. But if he's still not passing my eye test and his data isn't even that strong, then I think there are a couple alternatives that I need to consider in that spot. In game week 12, when ManCity are going to be playing Spurs, I'll definitely sell him. It's just going to be about who I'm going to be going to. I've mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to be bringing in the best striker in the Premier League into my FPL team, and his name is Heung-min Son. I've taken this chart from FPL script, and I just think that it's a really interesting chart to think about. Now, on the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, it plots the expected goals that a player has accumulated over the course of their career, and it's just like a cumulative aspect over time. Now, on the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, it's actually plotting the non-pen goals minus the non-pen expected goals. So the higher the better. And so you want to be having somebody that's in the top right corner, essentially, that's getting a lot of XG and then also scoring a lot more goals than the XG that they're actually expected to score. And so you're seeing that Haaland is actually performing at a trajectory that's overperforming at 19.2. And then you have Son who's overperforming at 24.6. That's nuts. Both of them are actually insane finishes over the course of their career, but the data actually backs up Son being a better finisher than Haaland. So if you didn't know, now you know. Messi is one of the only players that's better than Son in world football. It's crazy to think about. But I've already really known this. I've known Son is one of the best finishers in the league because I've been researching him and studying the Prem for such a long time. Like, that partnership between Kane and Son has been incredible over the past couple of years. And in previous seasons, when we're looking at his data and we look at his points per start, in all of these seasons, he was never on the penalties. And now Son has that as an extra route to points. And on top of that, Spurs are going to be playing in an attacking system relative to previous years where under Antonio Conte and under Jose Mourinho, where they're just very defensive coaches. So there's going to be more chances created for Heung-min Son in general, and that just makes sense. If you have Son in your team, create more chances because he's an actually overperformer, so give him more chances to score even more goals than he does on an annual basis. So I'm looking at his data, and all he needs is around 0.5 XG per 90, and he's going to be a very solid FPL pick. Now, if Son was priced at 10.0, like he should have been in every single season he's been in the Prem, he wouldn't have been relevant because he didn't play in systems that were attacking enough for him. But the way that Postecoglou is, he's going to get a lot of chances. And given the system where Solanke's dropping deeper and spreading balls in behind, Son is going to be one of the biggest differentials in the game. And I absolutely love it. And I think I prefer Son, Saka, and Palmer all as better value picks than Mo Salah and Erling Haaland. And it just makes sense. Like, Saka and Palmer already sort of picked themselves. They've been so consistent already last year and even in the first parts of this season. Son was always the one that I had more question marks surrounding. But looking at how the system is tweaked with Solanke and knowing that Son is also on pens, I shouldn't really doubt Son. Every time I've ever doubted him, I've sort of been a little bit wrong. And so I feel like I should trust him. I mean, think about his data. 130 returns from 85 XGI. That's nuts. Like, Son is just on a completely different level, and I genuinely need to bring him in, and I think he is going to be one of the best differentials in the game. I think his effective ownership is going to jump up around 10 or 15%, and I don't think we'll ever have Son as lowly owned as he was this week or in the weeks prior. This is what my Captaincy matrix looks like going into game week 9, and just a reminder that I'm looking to go against Salah and against Haaland for until they have double game weeks. So over the majority of the season, even though I'm a Liverpool fan, it doesn't really matter too much about what Haaland does for me. It's about what Salah will do, and then the weeks to come that'll really hurt me, and that'll test my discipline. But I did make a captaincy plan, and I think I'm going to stick to it. The only thing that I have changed is I've added Bukayo Saka in for Game Week 13, given how poor that West Ham have performed. Now, going into Game Week 9, I have two options. Phil Foden at home to Southampton, and Mbeumo at home to Ipswich. Both players are going to be at home, which is a check for both of them. Now, Mbeumo is more likely to start, which I can't believe I'm saying is a tick in his favor, and he's also more likely to play more minutes. Now, he also has the route because he has penalties and Phil Foden does not, but Phil Foden has some sort of set pieces. I think Bumo has that as well, but the penalties are a major swing factor to me. And if I think about Phil Foden, it really just depends on the minutes that he gets in the Champions League. If Foden is going to be benched in the Champions League, I won't captain him. If Foden starts and plays 90 in the Champions League, I won't captain him. But if Foden starts in the Champions League, plays 60 to 70 minutes, and then gets probably subbed off because City are already leading because they have an easy match in the Champions League, if I'm not mistaken, then I would expect Foden to start the next match as well, especially because there was a negative update on Kevin De Bruyne's fitness. So, given the poor performance against Wolves, and if he gets an early sub in the Champions League, then I will be on Foden cap. But I want to emphasize why Bryan Mbeumo is in my captaincy matrix this week. Mbeumo is playing against Ipswich, who have a zonal weakness on the side that Mbeumo is liking to attack into, as Mbeumo is the right winger and the player that's going to be defending him is going to be Leif Davis, and he's an attacking minded defender. And I know because I've played in this position for a lot of my football career, and I've noticed this a lot, where you have attacking defenders where if there's a player that's attacking them and they go by them, they just give up defensively. And I saw what happened when Liverpool did that and Salah got in behind Leif Davis. Davis just gave up. And I think Bumo will find a way to be in that position at some point, whether it's because Brentford are going to be creating chances themselves or if they counterattack Ipswich. I have a feeling that Mbeumo will be able to get a goal or an assist because he's attacking Leif Davis, and Leif Davis is just going to be concerned about creating chances for his team and not about defending. I know that could be a very rude statement, but that's just what I'm seeing whenever I watch Ipswich play, and I think Mbeumo will be able to take advantage. I trust the coach so much. I'm a big fan of Thomas Frank, and I think Mbeumo will find some joy in this fixture, and that's why I think he's the only essential player in FPL this week. And not even just this week, but in general. I just feel like he's the only player that if you don't own, take a hit and bring him in. Now, captaincy for me, I feel like I really want to captain Phil Foden. So right now my bus captain is going to be actually on Phil Foden, as you can see. But I think I'm actually more likely to captain Mbeumo because I think it's more likely in the scenarios that I've given that I end up on an Mbeumo captain because I don't really expect Foden to just play maybe 70 plus minutes. Like that would be the best case scenario for me. There's a chance that happens, but I think we live in a world where it's more likely that he either plays 90 or he plays 0, more likely than he plays like 60 to 75. So let's see what happens. But my dream scenario is that I'm on Foden cap going into this week. And I've already gone early. I've made my transfer of Saka to Son. I'm currently sitting at 3 million and I absolutely love my team. I don't care what fixtures Trent, Gabriel, and Raya have. They're going to be starting every single game for me. So it's just going to be about Rico Lewis and Aït-Nouri. Rico Lewis is at home to Southampton. Wonderful. Then in my midfield, I've got Mbeumo, Foden, Palmer, Son. Those are going to be 4 of the best midfielder picks in the game. Brennan Johnson and Solanke are going to be my punt differential picks. Now, I'm really happy to own them. Solanke is going to be in there until game week 11. Johnson, he's been very solid. A majority of the Brennan Johnson XGI that it's accumulating is actually XG. So really happy to own Brennan Johnson. Reminds me of the way Mane used to play for Liverpool. I know that's a crazy statement, and it's just the way that the system is and the form that Johnson's in. I think it's 7 goals in the last 8 professional games Johnson's been playing, so he's in red hot form really. And I know he did blank once and maybe, he's never going to score again, right? But I don't know. I just trust Johnson. He's in great form and he's representing very good value at 6.5. And I'm going to be starting Cunha ahead of Calvert-Lewin. Whenever I have a 50-50 decision, I'm going to be backing Cunha because he's just a better player. Even though it's away from home, I don't trust Brighton defensively at all. And I actually really rate Fulham. So I think it's the perfect scenario for me to be backing what I've been seeing where I really rate Fulham defensively and I don't rate Brighton at all. So it just makes sense. Apart from the fact that it's away from home. But either way, I'll live with my decision. I can live with it. I don't think Calvert-Lewin will even do too much damage. Even if he gets 1 return, I still think Cunha can at least match that regardless. So live my life with the least regrets. So this is the way that my team is lining up. I absolutely love the way it looks. And I do have 0.7 in the bank. And the idea is actually to do Foden to Saka in a couple of weeks' time. And then you would see that my midfield would have just really strong. Like where I'd be able to get to Bumo, Saka, Palmer, and Son. like it's the dream scenario. So I absolutely love the way my team looks right now, and I'm hoping that once the Arsenal fixtures come around, Saka is going to be back to full fitness, and I'll be able to bring him back to my team later. So this is the way that my team looks like for Game Week 9, and I'm wishing you guys lots of green arrows going into Game Week 9. If you've stayed and watched till this portion of the video, you're a real one. Thank you so much for our support, and wishing you a wonderful day. Talk to you guys again soon. Peace.